it off here. Okay, we're going to kick off this meeting. We're a little bit late here. My time clock says, let's see, it's, that's exactly, actually it's 16:03, and you got 2 strikes against you for reading my mind, because we are going to start using military time as a new novelty. So if I have to translate that as to what time it is, we will. I am going to ask the sergeant to round up our missing committee members. Use whatever force is necessary to drag them. No. Anyway, we were going to start as I don't think we have a quorum yet, do we? As a subcommittee. And I do want to just make a couple of housekeeping announcements. We have Assemblyman Knight, who is replacing Assemblyman DeVore. Is that correct? And on the agenda, let's see, we were not going to bring up which...
Number 14. 2365 is not noticed.
File item number 14. That's the one? It's been removed? Okay.
Item 12 is going to be pulled.
Item 12 is going to be pulled?
Mr. Chairman, if I may clarify, it was item 12 that I was going to originally pull off consent to discuss, but I believe you indicated you wanted to hold it over to the next hearing. Is that correct?
Okay. So, okay. Yep, that's fine. All right.
Thank you very much.
As I said, Assemblymember Torres, do you have any problem presenting in front of a subcommittee? Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Chairman Cook, and welcome to your new position.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. Assembly Bill 1330, Assemblymember Sala's bill last year, which was enacted a year ago, authorizes the Department of Veterans Affairs to set up a pilot project for the purpose of operating co-op housing projects for veterans. However, the definition of home under existing law does not include duplex, triplex, or fourplexes. Assembly Bill 2087 is sponsored by the Department of Veteran Affairs and will expand the definition of home under the CalVet program to include duplex, triplex, and fourplexes. The Department believes that this change will allow them to make loans to veterans who wish to purchase multi-unit dwellings and live in co-op housing. The committee analysis suggests the need to specify that the housing has to be affordable for veterans, and I'm happy to work with the committee to address this concern as the bill moves forward. And I have with me J.P. Tremblay from the Department to answer questions.
Thank you. J.P. Tremblay. J.P. Tremblay with California Department of Veterans Affairs. Thank you, Assemblywoman and Chair and members. This is a department-sponsored bill. What this would, as was stated, would allow us to do is to make loans to veterans who would live in duplex, triplex, or fourplexes. The intent is that either they could rent it out or use it more along the lines of providing for housing for low-income veterans, either with vouchers and others that could be utilized, as was mentioned, in a co-op operation type of setup. Currently, state law prohibits us from making loans to a veteran who it's only for the principal residence for that veteran. We're prohibited from making loans out to any veteran who has a property for anything more than his own or her own house. This would expand it and allow us to do that on this particular level. It does limit it only to the fourplex, partly because we don't want to have somebody going out and purchasing 100-unit, things like that. We also will still be going by the same standards of finances and paying off, qualifying for the loans and so forth. They would still need to come forward with making those payments and being able to prove that they can make those payments. And I have with me Jim Lowry, our Deputy Secretary for our Farm and Home Loan Division, who is our subject matter expert who can answer any questions relative to this.
Any questions by the committee member? Nothing. Did have a question on the amendments. The proposed amendments have been accepted. That's the bill that's being presented.
Absolutely.
Okay. What I wanted to do right now to do this is, first of all, establish a quorum before anybody gets tired of me talking and leaves. So if we could call the roll.
Cook,
Here.
Salas, Block, Knight, Gilmore, Lou, Perez, Saldana, and Ms. Yamada.
Quorum is present. And right now, I want to see if you have any other witnesses in support.
Mr. Chairman, members, Pete Conity, representing the American Legion, Department of California, is here today in the Capitol with their lobbying day, and I'd like to introduce our state commander, Dennis Furco, and his wife. Dennis?
Welcome aboard, sir.
Is that what they say in the Marine Corps? Welcome aboard?
Well, you know, some people claim we're still part of the Navy, although I have never personally acknowledged that, and that's the naval term that we...
Wait a minute, you're in support of the bill.
We support the bill.
Thank you for... any opposition to the bill as presented? Any comments, questions by committee members? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first, Ms. Torres, thank you for bringing this forward, and thank you to the department for, continuing to press ahead on these important issues. I know being your position as chair of Housing and Community Development, there are lots of ways that this committee can interact and work together with so many of the other issue areas. Since this is going to be kind of like group quarters or small group quarters, is there some thought that there would be aspects of supportive housing and providing some space for caregivers within these kinds of projects? Because I think it's important for the veterans to be together, but I think they will also need sometimes assistance. And I didn't know whether that was part of the conversation about some support for caregivers as well.
If I may, J.P. Trombley with the Department of Veterans Affairs. There's nothing specific in the bill that would prohibit or allow. I mean, a veteran would be able to, if he purchases a home, a fourplex, for example, if you have a veteran purchase a fourplex with, 3 bedrooms in each unit, in theory, they would be able to provide housing for 11 veterans. There's nothing in there that says that they couldn't, in the living rooms of one of those units, provide counseling sessions or something along those lines, or that veteran himself or herself, if they have the ability of the training to provide some of that counseling and supportive services themselves. So as long as it makes fiscal sense for us to make the loan to that individual and they can meet the debt of the mortgage, that's the plan.
Any other questions? Closing comments?
I apologize for not asking permission to come on board. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
The chair recommends a do pass with the bill as amended.
Move the bill.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Cook,
Aye.
Cook, aye. Salas, Block, Block, aye. Knight, Knight, aye. Gilmore, Gilmore, aye. Lou, Perez, Saldana, Yamada, Yamada, aye. So.
Bill is out. Thank you very much. And might as well do the consent agenda, I guess. Could I have a motion for the consent agenda? We have a motion and a second. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Cook,
Aye.
Cook, aye. Salas, Block, Block, aye. Knight, excuse me. Knight, aye. Gilmore, Gilmore, aye. Lou, Perez, Saldana, Yamada. Yamada, aye.
That consent calendar passes. Now we have Assemblymember Gilmore, AB 2143. Welcome aboard.
Semper Fidelis. Mr. Chair, members, AB 2143. In 2009, this committee commissioned a Bureau of State Audits report about the manner in which the CDVA delivers veteran services. In that audit, it was revealed that the most glaring deficiency was a lack of resources and manpower necessary to deliver the proper outreach to our state's veteran population. The Bureau also highlighted the need for the CDVA to coordinate more effectively with other state agencies currently administrating veterans programs or benefits. AB 2143 addresses these deficiencies by creating the California Veteran Services and Workforce Development Division within the California Department of Veterans Affairs. The purpose of this new division is to administer the Transitional Assistance Program, known as TAP, and the Disabled Veterans Outreach Program, DVOP, which are currently administered by the Employment Development Department, EDD. This bill would also require the division to collaborate with the staff from other state agencies, including but not limited to the Labor and Workforce Development Agency, the Employment Training Panel, and the State Department of Mental Health with regard to veteran services and benefits. This measure is modeled after a successful reform that was implemented in the state of Texas. Similar shortcomings have been identified in Texas prior to the enactment of these reforms. As a result, in a span of only 2 years, the Veteran Employment Report indicated that Texas moved from the near bottom to one of the best veterans employment assistance programs in the nation. Additionally, Texas dramatically increased the amount of veterans receiving federal disability payments. In fact, with approximately 400,000 less veterans, Texas veterans collect 44% more in overall disability payments than California's veterans. By the way, I'm a native Texan, so we can't allow that to happen in California. Many observers have attributed Texas' improvement to a more streamlined approach to delivering veteran services. In this model, the Texas Veteran Commission was tasked with overseeing administering veteran-related programs. AB 2143 aims to achieve the same level of continuity by consolidating the delivery of veteran services within the California Department of Veterans Affairs. Currently, veteran services are provided through a complicated delivery system that relies on several state agencies, veteran service organizations, and local governments. This complex system of delivery is not adequately serving California veterans, and AB 2143 is a considerable step towards breaking down the silos of state government in order to improve the state's delivery of veterans programs. I have with me today J.P. Timbley from the CDVA to answer any technical questions you may have regarding the transfer of EDD staff to the CDVA. I would like to accept the amendments proposed by the committee, and if you have any questions, I would ask for your aye vote.
Okay. You want to call your witnesses?
Please, Mr. J.P. Tremblay.
You're going to answer technical questions?
J.P. Trombley with the Department of Veterans Affairs. The department has no position at this point on this legislation, but I'm here to answer any technical questions or any questions that the committee may have.
Okay. We'll see if you have any other witnesses and then probably get back to you when we go into questions. Any other?
Mr. Chairman, members, Pete Conity, today representing the Department of California of the American Legion, but also the California Association of County Veteran Service Officers and the Vietnam Veterans of America. You know, and it's not, when the audit was proposed, I testified that the audit will find that we need to spend more money in the state of California on veterans services. We spend a lot of money on veterans homes, but we spend very little money on the 2.1 million veterans in our state. And one of the things that has occurred in my representing the County Veteran Service Officers, I have learned that we can get a lot of synergies and break down these silos, as Assemblyman Gilmore says, if we can get those EDD workers co-located with CDVA and or the County Veteran Service Officers. Right now, they are located in EDD offices. There are numerous counties in this state where County Veteran Service Officers don't even know who the EDD people are who fill out the help veterans. So unless a veteran goes to an EDD office, he doesn't know about the myriad of other veteran services that he would find out from CDVA, from CVSOs, and also from veteran service organizations, because they're off in their own little world. It's not that they're bad people or anything, it's just that we have these silos. And one of the things the audit wanted to do was break down the silos. And this bill will help to break down those silos, and we can increase the efficiency of our workforce, just as Texas did. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? I recognize that youngster.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Bill Manus, Chairman, Legislative Committee for Veterans of Foreign Wars, Department of California. Speaking for the department, we are happy to support this bill. You've heard many of you speaking for some time now on trying to improve services that are available to our veterans in the state of California and our outreach services. I think this offers a very innovative approach to in this matter, and hopefully, I don't want to necessarily copy Texas, but I think they have some examples to offer us as to what possibly could be done, and maybe this will start something along that line. So we're happy to support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Speakers in opposition to the bill? Seeing none, open this up for questions from committee members. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I am supporting this bill today, but I did have maybe some logistics or operations questions, since I think good military people are always thinking about those kinds of things, right? You know, how many folks, actual bodies, would be affected by this kind of a transfer? You know, if we have the EDD veteran specialists and the disabled veterans business enterprise folks, how many total personnel in the state would be affected? Do you have an idea?
It would be approximately 180.
180.
Yes.
So 180 people might be physically transferring to offices to co-locate, which I'm, you know, a strong believer in putting folks together that can work together to get the veterans or whatever community of interest it is served best. Does CDVA facilities right now, space-wise and, you know, equipment and all of those considerations, would you be able to support 180 new people to coming into your offices, in your office space? I mean, it's not that many people, but still, you know.
I understand. Going from the experience of what happened in Texas, basically the people stayed in the basic same physical location where they were. It's just the reporting structure changed. So if something like this were to happen, necessarily we don't see that their offices would relocate immediately. I couldn't say for sure until it happened, and there is, I believe, in this bill a time for us to work on that process on how we would do that transfer if it were to occur. From our perspective, many of our staff do go out and are out in the community on a regular basis. County Vet Service Officers are out in the community and going out, so they're not just in an office. So that would be something that would need to be worked out with the department EDD and the new employees as they would be moved over to our department.
Mm-hmm. But, I mean, you do envision, and Mr. Gilmore, I would think that would be part of the vision, that just because you change the reporting structure, you know, if the troop is located in one area but is reporting to the general someplace else, but it's not under their direct command, it becomes sort of, to me, self-defeating. I mean, eventually you'd kind of want people to be working in somewhat of a close physical proximity. And I do know the veteran service officers, Ted Pantillo being my proudest example, since he started in YOLO, was all over the place. I mean, we could hardly keep him in YOLO, actually. But so I'm not saying that the EDD employees, maybe aren't doing outreach. They do veterans forums for us in my district. But eventually you do foresee some kind of, maybe Mr. Gilmore, what his vision is of this, that they would be co-located at some point.
It's very likely that some people would need to be relocated, some in one-stop shops. Some of these one-stop shops are in county vet service officers have same locations, or they're very in the same building. So it would not be a major move. But again, this is something that would have to be reviewed as we would begin the process if this were to go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could weigh in on that too, county veteran service offices would also be willing to host and to co-locate if the EDD people were to meet. I got to give you an example from a hearing about a month ago that I think you were at, where the San Diego County has more OIF or Afghan and Iraqi war veterans in any county in the United States. And the county veteran service officer from San Diego had never met the EDD people who worked in the TAP program or the DVOP program. So that's an example of the silos we're trying to break down.
Assemblyman Knight.
Trying to get a little apples to apples on here. Before Texas made this dramatic change, were they very similar to what California is doing today, or did they have a completely different program? Or, as I understand, we're trying to compare to Texas, and I've seen the numbers that Texas, their average compensation per vet is quite a bit higher than ours. And I would take that has happened over the last year or two since this change. But previous to that, were they working off the same type of a program that we do?
To the best of my understanding, they were, Assemblyman Knight. I do know that Texas has I represent the National County Veteran Service Officers, and Texas has a network of county veteran service officers. So I do believe, because the Texas EDD, to the best of my knowledge, was similar to what we currently have in California, and they completely shook up the system and made it more efficient because they were very unhappy with the unemployment figures for their returning veterans.
If I may, Mr. Cook, Mr. Knight, I think the main issue here is, and Mr. Tremblay hit on it, is Texas has this one-stop shop. It is proven to be incredibly effective, and I think in our current fiscal crisis that California is facing, we need to be looking as legislators at every possible way that we can streamline government, make government more effective, more efficient. This is really the highlight of my day is coming to Veterans Committee. Of all the committees that I'm involved with in the building, this committee I enjoy because we put partisan politics aside here. We come here for these individuals here, and I know each and every one of you that I look at have just a burning desire to serve those and make decisions that are good for our veterans, those that are returning. They deserve, each and every one of them deserve the very best possible care that we can give them. Texas has proven. I wish that we had made this step earlier, and those Texans were looking at Californians and say, hey, we need to adopt what Texas is doing. But we have an opportunity here to move this bill forward, to help our veterans. They deserve everything that we can possibly do for them. I would urge your aye vote for this.
We have a motion and a second. Yes, Assembly Member.
So, well, thank you. I don't know if you meant that as your close, but I did want to express, and it was noted that in San Diego we do have a lot of veterans. And breaking down silos is something I've worked on with education and ensuring that our military families who have very special needs when it comes to their children transferring around in and out of California, that our Department of Education treats them in a better way. So, but we did also do a good year of study on the proposals that we brought forward to enter into this national compact on education and how it affects the children in active duty military families. And my concern is that, as Mr. Knight said, if we're trying to compare Texas results with what could happen in California, that we really should evaluate that very carefully, because there are similarities, but I think there are also differences. Mr. Conity pointed out that we have very good CVSO offices. One of my first bills in my first term was to increase the funding for those, because those people who work in those offices have very good expertise, but they frankly don't have the financial support to do as well as they could. And I wonder if investing some funds into those offices would increase the return on investment and match the returns that we're seeing in Texas. So I appreciate this. I think it's an important concept. I just have some concerns about moving things around, the potential costs, how long it will take people to get up to speed when we already have some people with great expertise that maybe just need a little more support. So I just want to be clear on why I'm hesitant to support this today, because just from my own experience working on similar proposals, there's a lot of moving parts, and right now when we are still tens of billions in a short budget year, if there are additional costs associated with this before those returns can be realized from Federal Department of Defense reimbursements to our veterans, which we desperately need in California, I'm just concerned about how this might be paid for.
Very good.
Any other questions?
I have a quick.
Yes, sir.
Just a comment. I mean, I share Ms. Saldana's concerns about how this will be paid for. To me, that's an appropriations matter, and I think as policy for veterans, I think this is excellent policy, so I will support it here, and we'll see what happens in approps.
Thank you.
I just want to make a couple of comments. I'm going to support your bill. I'm also concerned about pay. I kind of agree with the concept and what you're doing. From the standpoint, I think certain departments are overwhelmed. I almost committed a sin in that I was going to try and talk about the use of acronyms. And everyone that knows me in committee knows I cannot stand acronyms. And maybe because I was in the military for 26 years, where we got in this language, this culture where we use these acronyms, and no one outside of the military could understand what we're talking about. Then I come to Sacramento, and they have their own language here, where no one outside of Sacramento can understand what we're talking about, because we use countless number of acronyms in a sentence. So I'm going to try and change the culture a little bit, because I'm real big on hoping that the veterans and everyone who's watching will understand what we're saying in English, and we won't use any big legal words I guess it's the dumb Marine in me, but I'm going to try and change that. But as I was saying, I think it's going to be very, very difficult to change the culture a little bit of one organization to the other. I do think what they did in Texas is laudable. I think it's going to take a while. It's not going to, but I think the county veteran service officers, they are the ones that are experiencing this. I have a bill which is trying to get funding for them in a different way. It's not coming from general money. It's going to be a big driver. But I really think I'm going to continue to support bills where we can get money for some of these veterans programs, because we're going to pay now or we're going to pay much, much, much more later. So we have a motion and a second. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Cook.
Aye.
Cook, aye. Salas. Block. Block, aye. Knight. Knight, aye. Gilmore. Gilmore, aye. Lou. Lou, aye. Perez. Saldana. Yamada. Yamada, aye.
The motion carries, and you're just in time. Thank you very much. Assemblymember Gilmore, your bill is out. You're up. And we've had a number of members that have joined us since we took roll. And I can't remember, Marty, Assemblymember Black, were you part? And Assemblymember Lou, and I believe Assemblymember Sedania, was she in? She was on the roll, though, right? Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, because that's, I still
Emeritus.
refer to you as that, emeritus.
Emeritus.
Yes.
You're the professor. Okay. Mr. Chair and members, thank you for allowing me to present AB 2661, a bill that would require the California National Guard to develop a comprehensive and ongoing mental health assessment program for every California Guard soldier who has been deployed to a combat zone. The California Military Department, or the California National Guard as we know them, have few mental health personnel. These personnel provide emergency crisis counseling, referral, and personal support in combat stress evaluations and mental health support for an increasingly tasked state military force. The growing reliance on the National Guard has resulted in more than 32,000 deployments as of January 2010. This number also reflects multiple deployments. Peace officers and active duty service members, deployed National Guard soldiers, have similar experiences with dealing with and working in a continual hostile environments, violence, and death. Peace officers have a stable, defined, and extensive support structure to deal with stress, grief, and loss. The National Guard has no correspondent full-time support systems for service members. This lack of an ongoing service member care capability leads to losses in membership, mental health problems, and negative impacts on the families of service members. A comprehensive and mandatory mental health program would enable the National Guard to step up its support structure for deploying and returning service members to enhance morale, retention, and mental health. Thank you, and I ask for your aye vote on this measure, and I have
Your witnesses?
a witness in support.
Senator Cook, or Assemblymember Cook, the
By the
California.
way, you look very sharp in that
Thank
uniform
you.
today.
Thank you,
I got
sir.
compliments.
I was about to say, Colonel
Yeah,
Cook,
well, as a former IG, I did a quick make sure you're tying your line ribbons, but that's, you
finally
look
I got
very
it.
sharp.
Major Chris Weaver, California Military Department. We do not have an approved position on this bill. I can say this, though, that just kind of a little history on the mental health program in the California National Guard. Both General Wade, when he was the Adjutant General, and General Kite take mental health to be a very serious issue in the National Guard for returning service members. They do not look at it as a federal versus state issue. We totally understand the concept of federalism. They look at it as a service members returning to California's communities, families from Del Norte County down to Imperial County. The history, the recent history since I've been around, at least for our mental health program, is last year we sought to get a BCP approved for.
BCP?
I'm sorry, and you admonished the crowd already for.
Budget change proposal.
Yes, sir. Budget change proposal for 8 positions to basically serve as emergent responders. There were 4 chaplains, because as you know, the chaplains play a vital role in mental health in the military. and then 4 mental health professionals to respond to emergencies for returning Guards member. That was not approved, that budget change proposal, and it morphed into a very important budget change proposal. It basically used Proposition 63 funds to hire for $450,000 to hire 3 personnel to work with the VSOs in the counties, veteran service officers, pardon me, veteran service officers in the counties. And that is a new program that we think is really going to benefit our service members. The other thing that we do that's really important is we have what's called the Tri-West program, and that's embedded healthcare professionals in certain armories. I'd have to look at my notes to tell you exactly how many. But as the process of returning home is you demob, and as any mobilized National Guardsman will say, the first thing that we want to do is go home. So when we're being screened, we basically tell them what pretty much what they want. We go home. Well, then what happens is these National Guardsmen go back to the communities, and we don't see them for 3 months. Basically, they have 3 months leave from drill. Once they return, then as issues arise in these armories that have embedded Tri-West professionals, then they seek the care through those Tri-West professionals, and they're referred out to the proper health care treatment. Again, we don't have an approved position. I did want to pass on the history of the mental health program. It basically comes down to money and being able to fund these positions to have a comprehensive program. And the National Guard's always looking both on the federal and the state side to get those monies to provide those services.
Thank you very much. Any other witnesses?
Mr. Chairman, members, Pete Conatee representing the American Legion, the AMVETS, and the Vietnam Veterans of America. And I know Assemblywoman Salas has been working on this issue for a long time, as have other people. These are citizen soldiers who are being asked to do more and give more than active duty military are being asked, because these are supposed to be part-time soldiers and servicemen and women. And it just boggles my mind that they're on their 3rd or their 4th deployment, and anything we can do to help them and their families in mental health is, as you said, is money we will save down the road, and lives we will save, and families we will save. So we would urge an aye vote.
Any other witnesses?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Bill Manus, Legislative Chairman, Veterans of Foreign Wars. Again, thank you very much. VFW really appreciates the efforts of Assemblywoman Salas on this legislation. She's worked on this for some time, and we think it's very, very necessary to support our National Guard members in this regard. On a personal basis, in addition to what I work with the VFW, I do volunteer work trying to set up a Veteran Services Center at Los Alamitos in Orange County, and I can see the needs for this type of service for our Guard members in that area. The difference between what they get and what the active duty personnel get is very significant. We really do need this type of thing for them. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any speakers in opposition? Questions, comments from members of the panel? Nothing?
Well, I can't resist. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Salas, for bringing this forward. It's just more of a reflection that I guess looking back in history, the term shell shock and battle fatigue and other, phrases that have been used to describe sort of similar conditions of just the stresses and what we now call PTSD. We've come into the post-traumatic stress disorder. Got me. That, we are addressing this now in a 21st century context. I guess my question is, do you find, for our active military person here, do you find that people are willing to seek services because, there's still some barriers there, I think, that are self-imposed at times or imposed by the culture in the military, that it's not okay to admit that you need support and assistance. And, I of course, am wholeheartedly in support of this bill today. I know that my alma mater for where I got my social work degree, I think I mentioned this in committee before, is the first social work graduate program in the nation that has a military social work specialty. And we've got lots of new graduates coming forward looking for placements. I think coming this June will be, I think, the first class of MSWs, Masters in Social Work. Graduates that have this specialty. But do you find that people are willing to seek services, or what can we do to encourage people to do so, besides setting up these programs and evaluations?
Yes, ma'am. That's a difficult question. I think maybe in the past that's been the case. I think that we would find in the National Guard now that it's not a question of whether the military's past treatment of individuals, but more so from the National Guard perspective, it's that they're coming, that the individual's coming home and they don't come to a military base or post where there's a community of other military individuals who are also returning home with them, but they go to their own communities, and they may not realize necessarily some may not realize. I think it's a difficult question. I think some people do come out and say, recognize that they have the symptoms of PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, and then others don't. And I think maybe others don't really, maybe don't feel that they don't want to recognize themselves as such. It's a very difficult question. I would say it runs the gambit from both ends of the spectrum.
Assemblymember Knight.
Yes, I wonder if we have the three specialists that have been hired basically through Prop 63 monies. Those specialists, the Guardsmen could still use those even though they are not on duty at the time. So they might be off doing their regular job. They could still use these specialists. Is that correct?
No, sir. They are full-time staffed individuals, but per Prop 63, they're funded to work with the counties, and they're not allowed, per Prop 63, they're not allowed to give direct services to the service members. What they are allowed to do, and we found it to be I think it's just at the beginning, it's just starting to boom, is they seek to find the service that will provide the necessary mental health for the individuals. There's only three. We have one in the north and we have one in the south. So as the service members come identify with having a mental health issue, then those individuals work with the counties to find the mental health professional that would assist them.
Any other questions? We have a motion and a second. I had a couple of comments on this. I think what you're doing is great. Somebody that perhaps probably should have had I was in that category of maybe somebody should have looked long and hard at me when I came back from Vietnam. The problem with this is I hope we identify those that need it. There's going to be people that are deployed to a combat zone. They're never going to hear a shot fired. And there's going to be others that go through hell. And the impact on their psyche is going to vary tremendously. You're right. The culture, I think, has changed. Years ago, you didn't admit that you had the nightmares and the dreams and you were a little screwy or anything like that. You had to just suck it up and get the job done. And I think our society I think we've become much more sensitive in so many ways. You know, I even hug people now. I'm ruining my image. But I think that's a good thing. I'm a little, maybe I shouldn't admit that, but things have changed. I'm just very, very concerned about the costs on this, because we could do these screenings and would do such a poor job. I was hoping that as this bill goes forward, that I know they're separated from the feds, but I really believe that the feds, if they're they should at least do the initial screening. I mean, they have the background where, you know, somebody's been in 25 firefights, they've been wounded, they've lost 25% of their company or their battalion. That's going to have an impact. And those are qualifiers, I think, that immediately that person should go to the head of the line. And I just hope we don't get caught up in everybody going through there. There's some that probably need more attention, and they need it quicker than others, or we're going to miss it, or it's going to deteriorate, and bad things are going to happen. So I will support this. As I said, money's going to be a big problem, but I would hope you would think about incorporating some of those suggestions I make as we hammer out this bill. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, I did not see your hand up.
You triggered a question I had about the Prop 63 in the counties. Are there any counties that are giving veterans preferences in providing services under the Prop 63 programs that you're aware of?
No. We had legislation that was passed and signed into law that required counties to include stakeholders, veteran stakeholders, in the planning process, but not direct dedication of funding for veterans' mental health. And Mr. Cook, as far as your suggestions go, I think that you made some really, really good points relative to the cost and who should bear the burden of that cost, because our California National Guard people there are soldiers. However, they are serving in a war with multiple deployments. So there is a responsibility of the federal government to take care of these veterans. But in absence of that happening, then we have to have permanent and stable systems in place in order to, make sure that they do get access to that mental health component. And so this is a start, and certainly what I intend to do is to work with my Congressman Bob Filner, who is chair of the federal side of it, to see if there's some way that we could work out MOU between the federal government, the federal VA, and our VA in order to be able to see if there's some way that we could get reimbursement for that. But that's a discussion that we have to have apart from this particular.
Right, and I think an MOU is great. And if you want to go forward with a resolution, I'm sure that there's many members, including myself, that would like to join you on this so that we can call this to the attention of Congress and maybe get some help.
Excuse me, Chairman Cook. I had another
I'm
question
sorry.
on Prop 63, but she addressed some of the federal issues. You said that there would have been a bill signed that regarding Prop 63 to develop expertise on dealing with PTSD?
No. It was to include the military stakeholders, veterans groups, in developing the Prop 63 plan for each individual county.
So that they were involved with developing the plan, and as a result of developing that plan, is there an outreach proposal that came out of developing that plan?
You would have to look at each specific plan for each specific county and see how that they implemented it. And some of the counties haven't completed their implementation of the Prop 63 planning process.
So there is a state requirement that was done, and presumably
that the bill said that included in the planning process shall be organizations that have the veterans' interest in mind in the implementation of the Prop 63 funding.
And so was there a specific recommendation that came as a result of those groups being part of this?
You'll have to look at each individual county and see how they develop their plan. What it merely said was that there had to be people that were stakeholders that were advocating for the interest of the veterans community that were part of the planning group. Before that, they were not part of the planning groups.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, once again, I want to thank you very, very much. We have a motion and a second. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Cook.
Aye.
Cook, aye. Salas.
Aye.
Salas, aye. Block. Block, aye. Knight. Gilmore. Gilmore, aye. Lou. Lou, aye. Perez. Saldana. Saldana, aye. Yamada. Yamada, aye.
Okay, I think that, I know. I want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
I did want to welcome all the,
Thank you very much.
thank you, the members of the American Legion that are in the audience. They had their special day today. I was pleased to address them. And I just want to commend you again for all your hard work for veterans issues and everything that you do. You know, the reason why I actually think we get a lot done in this committee and have done a lot is because of organizations such as you that keep our noses to the grindstone. So thank you very much. Keep it up and stay combat ready. Anyway, I'm going to keep the roll open for people to add on, and that concludes our meeting, and it is now, what is it, 16:53 for those of you that understand military time. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.